Orchids Part 3. The orchid family is the second largest family of plants. Only the daisy family has more species. Orchids grow on every continent except Antarctica. In temperate regions, some grow in soil, but most orchids are tropical epiphytes, plants that grow without soil, on other plants, that sprout in the treetops. Many dwell in specialized natural niches so small that any disturbance of the habitat can mean extinction. Orchid flowers evolved to attract pollinators, which can be various species of bees, moths, butterflies, flies, and hummingbirds. These pollinators are attracted by odor, shape, nectar, color, or some irresistible combination of these factors. Orchids have an endless number of fragrances that range from the sublime to the overpoweringly sweet, to the really stinky. Charles Darwin was fascinated with orchids and their unique and bizarre adaptations. Based on his knowledge of orchids and their pollinators, when he examined Madagascar's Star of Bethlehem orchid Ingra ecum sesquipedale, he predicted that the flower's pollinator must be an insect with an extremely long tongue that could probe deep enough into the orchid's 12-inch long spur to reach the nectar at the bottom. His entomologist contemporaries ridiculed him for such a suggestion, but Darwin had the last laugh. About 40 years later, the orchid's pollinator was discovered, and, sure enough, the xanthopan moth has a foot-long proboscis that it keeps rolled up when it isn't out nectar hunting. An orchid's thick, spongy roots absorb water and nutrients from rain and dew. In some species, the roots are green and can photosynthesize, too. As you might expect in such a large family, orchid flowers are quite diverse, but they all have 3 petals surrounded by 3 sepals. One petal, called the lip, looks quite different from the other 2 petals and sepals. It typically provides the perfect landing platform for a pollinator. Protected by the petals and sepals, a central column consists of male and female reproductive parts. Pollinated orchid seeds are tiny, they look like fine powder. That's because each seed holds just a few cells of genetic material, without any food for the developing embryo. When an orchid seed lands on another plant, a specific microscopic fungus invades the embryo and lives there, providing water and nutrients. Eventually, the orchid grows and makes its own food and energy by photosynthesizing. The fungi are still in the roots, they continue to help providing the orchid with water and nutrients, and in return they get sugars and energy created by the orchid. Botanists describe this type of root partnership as mycorrhizal. Explorers who brought exotic orchids to Europe gave way to Victorian-era orchid hunters who sought out new species and often plundered native populations while destroying habitats in the process. At home, horticulturists struggled to propagate the plants until 1922, when Louis Knudsen of Cornell University discovered how to germinate orchid seeds in an agar jelly. Today, successful cultivation and hybridization has resulted in the development of tens of thousands of named orchid hybrids. Many orchids are endangered, mostly due to habitat destruction and overcollection. The International Union for Conservation of Nature, IUCN, 2022, has assessed more than 1,600 species of orchids, and categorizes more than 860 of them as vulnerable or endangered, and of those, 209 are critically endangered, and 5 are now extinct. All orchids are protected by the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora, CITES. It is illegal, whether for profit or personal use, knowingly or unknowingly, to transport orchids across international borders without the proper paperwork.
I bet.